ועושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Oh, that worked very well. Good afternoon. Chanukah Sameach to all of you, and welcome to our very special annual Chanukah in Parliament. If I could firstly begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather and pay my respects to those past and present. Firstly, I know we have an apology from Rabbi Chaim Herzog, who is overseas at the moment and has been instrumental as the Chabad of CBD in organising these events. And he will be very disappointed that he's not here today, because this is one of the biggest Chanukah in Parliaments that we've had in a number of years. So we will pass our best wishes to Chaim Herzog. But in his place, we have a number of rabbis of here, the plural of rabbis, rabbonim, which includes Rabbi Glassman, Rabbi Reisenberg, Rabbi Gabi, Rabbi Nagel, and of course Rabbi Engel, who will be presiding with us here today in place of Rabbi Herzog. So welcome to all of the rabbis. Could I also acknowledge my colleagues and of course the Honourable Julia Gillard, the former Prime Minister of Australia, if we could give her a big round of applause. And of course the Honourable Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable Michael O'Brien, the Leader of the Opposition. We also have a number of... Yes, please, you can give them a round of applause too. Excellent. Starting off well. We have also a number of other state politicians here with us today. Mr Neil Angus, Shadow Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Paul Hamer, State Member for Box Hill, and also my co-convener of the Liberal Friends of Israel, Nick Wakeling, the Member for Ferntree Gully, Nina Taylor, the State Member for Southern Metropolitan Region, and Mr Envar Erdogan, also the Member for Southern Metropolitan Region. Stephen Baroda, I wanted to just thank you for your organisation of today. To all of the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, well, once again, welcome to what is an important day on the calendar, and that is our Chanukah here in Parliament. The Chabad of CBD, if you have franchises of Chabads, the Chabad of CBD would have like the franchise going in terms of being if you like, the group that is able to have the Chanukah in this prestigious Parliament House, Sukkot, which we all get to celebrate just down the road, and of course the Purim festival, which we tend to have at the Melbourne Town Hall. It's certainly, in terms of position, it's got the best position going, and of course have been doing this for a number of years, which I'm certainly being very proud to support and being involved with them for a number of years. Could I also acknowledge the councillors here today as well, Margaret Eskoff, the new Mayor of Glenara, and Jamie Hymes as well. So today, of course, with Chanukah represents, if you like, one of our other festivals, which unfortunately we as Jews get to celebrate, if you like, situations of times of evil, times where, if you like, they say we have our enemies that have tried to effectively wipe us out. We've stood up and fought the good fight. At the end of the good fight and being able to survive, we end up having a big celebration and eating lots of food. Well, that's no different to Chanukah, of course, where we know the traditions of Chanukah with losing, if you like, the first temple to the Syrians, and of course after that the Maccabees, a small army, being able to hold the might of the Syrians to effectively take over the temple, and effectively the miracle that followed from Chanukah in terms of that little thing of oil that would only be there to last for one day, but miraculously lasted for 8 days. And as I'm talking, we have the Chanukah being positioned here at the front, quite rightfully, we light the 8 candles to represent the 8 days of Chanukah, that miracle, which is an important thing that we continue to do each and every year. And tradition is so important within our community, and I wanted to just particularly say that no matter what side of politics, it is very, very important that we, certainly in Victoria, are very proud that we celebrate multiculturalism. We celebrate the ability to be able to have our own cultures, our festivals quite prominently, whether it be in the city, whether it be on public display. We do that, and it is important to do that. And as I said at the Sukkot celebration, that when we have our little festive sukkah in the city, the fact that we can do that on public display and people can come in and share and understand about different cultures and learn from different cultures and backgrounds is absolutely so important. And that's why we do it well in Victoria, and I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from that. Unfortunately, the celebration of, if you like, the victories that happen with Chanukah, the modern day Chanukah is the anti-Semitism that we all face. And we all have to struggle with each and every day. And the solution to that is education. The solution to that is to ensure that those who are intolerant learn more about our cultures and backgrounds and know that we are certainly human beings, individuals that should be able to go about their life freely without the kinds of hate that exist. And we need to do everything, absolutely everything, to stamp that out. So on to this day of Chanukah, can I once again welcome you all. As I say, it's a very, very important day on our calendar. We are very, very proud to be able to have, as politicians, to have the Chanukiah lit in Queen's Hall, which is your hall. This is your parliament, and we welcome you here today, and we hope that you enjoy the festivities, and thank you all for being here today. It is my great pleasure now to introduce the Honourable Julia Gillard. So many of you will know that Julia Gillard was the former Prime Minister for the 27th Prime Minister of Australia and the leader of the Australian Labor Party from 2010 to 2013. She was previously the 13th Deputy Prime Minister of Australia from 2007 to 2010 and held cabinet positions in education, employment, workplace relations and the Minister for Social Inclusion from 2007 to 10. Also, in more recent years, amongst her many activities that she is involved in, she has been on the board of Beyond Blue and in 2017 was made the chair of Beyond Blue, taking over from the Honourable Jeff Kennett. Miss Gillard has always been, in amongst other things, a strong supporter of Israel, and in 2013 was awarded the Jerusalem Prize, which is a very, very prestigious award that we have had former politicians and current politicians in. Last month, Prime Minister Scott Morrison was awarded the Jerusalem Prize, and of course, and Julia Gillard received that in 2013. In 2017, she also received an honorary doctorate from the Ben Gurion University, along with former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, and is, as I say, always been a staunch supporter of Israel and of the Jewish community. Could you please join with me in welcoming the Honourable Julia Gillard?
Thank you very much. I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and, in a spirit of reconciliation, paying my respects to elders past and present. I'd like to thank David for that very generous introduction. I'd like to acknowledge Josh Lieberman, who is in the crowd here. He introduced me to Rabbi Herzog, and even though Rabbi Herzog couldn't be with us today, he's the reason I'm here, so I want to thank him for extending the invitation to share this special moment. I also want to acknowledge Premier Daniel Andrews and Opposition Leader Michael O'Brien. I'm delighted to be here for this early Chanukah celebration. I trust you all enjoy the spirit of the dedication when it begins more formally on the 22nd. Chanukah calls on us to think anew about how light drives out darkness and the difference between might and right, about how we should aim to follow one good deed with another, and so on without end, and the bonds that grow when beliefs, traditions and culture are explained and shared. Proudly multicultural Melbourne welcomes and embraces this kind of coming together. Celebrations like this, ancient, joyful and reflective, are a part of Melbourne's past, present and future. I know that from having the privilege of representing a remarkable and diverse community in Melbourne's West. Part of my heart will always be in the electorate of Lalor and in Victoria. Fortunately, even though I live in South Australia now, my work here brings me back to Melbourne regularly. Now when I return here, I see the city with fresh eyes. I'm always struck by its beauty, its energy, and most particularly by its inclusive spirit. And it's that spirit which brings us here together today. I'm delighted and somewhat daunted that on this special occasion I've been asked to share some things I've learned across my life, which might be thought-provoking for others as they enter this period of reflection. One key thing I've learned is that diverse and harmonious communities like Melbourne don't happen by accident. They are created by deliberate action. Their birth, maturation and strengthening is driven from the grassroots, by volunteers, workers from all industries, neighbours and friends. It comes from the way we treat each other and how we value each other's stories and experiences. It is deepened by the way our elected representatives include as many people as possible in conversations about how we work, live and celebrate side by side. This requires a sense of purpose from our leaders, and living that is not always easy. Now, I know that no one has the time to listen to a former politician talk about how tough it is for elected representatives, and despite the often cited pitfalls, long hours, media scrutiny, interesting colleagues, it has always been and remains an honour to serve a community as a Member of Parliament. One of the hardest parts of being a representative is being clear with yourself and your community about why you are there, what your purpose is. But I know from my own time in politics, a sense of purpose is what sustained me. When I became Prime Minister, I was given the sage advice that I should write down on a single page what my purpose was and what I wanted to achieve. It would be a touchstone for me on the toughest days and a guide to those around me about what we were governing for. I recommend this process no matter what your pursuit. For anyone hoping to have an impact on the world, big or small, a strong and clear sense of purpose should be at the core of what you do every day. A sense of purpose helped me steer in the right direction and to achieve change. Being clear about that purpose from the outset allowed me to pursue the things I believe in, no matter what life threw at me. For me, purpose has been shaped by my values, a belief in the dignity of work, the transformative power of education, living and working sustainably on this great land, the importance of caring for others and equality. This purpose allowed me to pursue change in government and in my time since politics to continue working in the fields I'm most passionate about. I now dedicate my time to education, gender equality and mental health. And while these days of work take me all around the world rather than Melbourne and Canberra as I used to move, its core purpose for me has remained the same. A belief in opportunity for all, an understanding of the many constraints that hold us back from realising that vision. However, I discovered early in my career that even with a clear sense of purpose, staying on task isn't always easy. The modern world is fast moving, it's complicated. The media cycle can provide us with endless resources, but the pace can also be wildly distracting. Social media and the spread of misinformation has made communicating purpose harder and staying on track more difficult. Moving forward with purpose can be tough. It requires perseverance and resilience. I often say that resilience is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But I also know that many outside and internal influences affect our capacity for resilience, and the support of others can be a big part in helping us navigate our fears and challenges. Checking in on each other is important. Listening to each other can make a difference. I believe this will be particularly important for the leaders and advocates of the future. When the going gets tough, it's easy to blame others. When the outside world seems noisy and scary, it's easy to lash out. In responding to the perceived needs and fears of the community, it is easy to lose our way. I have no doubt the many challenges we face at times seem overwhelming. Our economy is rapidly changing. Technological advancements will continue to be the major disruption of our time. Action on climate change is urgent. Divisive language challenges cohesiveness. There are people who rightly feel left behind or left out. But if our purpose remains constant, if we persevere, we can overcome even the biggest obstacles. None of this means that it's best to forge ahead alone. On many occasions, the best way to succeed is to collaborate. On this occasion, as we meet in this grand parliament, but on what is Aboriginal land, I cannot help but reflect on a pressing matter in today's Australia which requires us to work together. Through the Uluru Statement from the Heart, we are being asked to show a culture of joint endeavour, one requiring an open heart and open mind, to face our past with honesty, to acknowledge the lack of empathy and respect we have shown towards Indigenous Australians, and to recognise the continuing tragedy of intergenerational trauma. It is impossible for me to understand what it would have felt like to be a kid wrenched away from my parents. The ripple effect of despair, terror and grief through communities tore them apart. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, that intergenerational trauma is compounded by continuing experiences of racism, exclusion and disadvantage. All these factors increase the risk of mental ill health, substance abuse and suicide. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are twice as likely to die by suicide as non-Indigenous Australians. They make up around 3% of the Australian population, but account for 1/4 of suicide deaths among those under 18 years of age. These numbers are shocking and they remind us what is at stake for our country. Great damage has been done to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities through 2 centuries of discrimination and dislocation. Grief, trauma and loss have assisted in weakening the powerful cultural bonds and support networks which existed in the past. As chair of Beyond Blue, I know a strong sense of self, connections to community and recognition of culture contribute to our well-being. As a nation, through the Uluru Statement, we are being invited to walk together on a path of healing. We should accept this generous invitation with gratitude and a determination to change. As we move forward here in Australia with an open heart and mind, we can also guard against attempts at divisiveness. Our challenges cannot be met with knee-jerk reactions, blame or cruelty. I have never stopped believing that the capacity for growth and prosperity can exist side by side with compassion and empathy. In fact, that is exactly what makes Australia so special. We come together to celebrate and reflect at times like this. That reflection includes acknowledging every part of our history and culture. At the same time, we embrace progress and change. A great example of this is our willingness to talk openly about mental health for the first time in decades. We know suicide and mental ill health take a terrible toll on our community, but we can all take a step towards well-being when we talk openly about mental health, mental illness and suicide prevention, when support is known about, joined up, accessible and affordable, when stigma and discrimination are stared down and diversity and respect are embraced. And with the right focus in the right place, the places where we live our lives, in early childhood, in families, in workplaces, schools and communities, mental ill health can be prevented. With early intervention, we can address mental health issues before they become severe, which in turn makes these issues more manageable. We are on our way to developing mentally healthy communities. I would in particular like to acknowledge the courage and sense of stewardship shown by Premier Daniel Andrews and Minister for Mental Health Martin Foley in establishing the Royal Commission into Victoria's mental health system. The draft report from the Royal Commission sets the scene for bold, transformative reform of the state's mental health system, and I believe governments both here in Victoria and Australia-wide are ready to change the way we support people and families affected by poor mental health. As the year comes to a close, and we use this special time to reflect in myriad ways across Australia, we have an opportunity for all of us to think about our purpose and what we will strive for. I take inspiration from Chanukah and the use of light to drive out darkness, in the same way that I take inspiration from the traditional purpose of the labour movement, that great labour notion of the light on the hill, the bringing of something better to people in whatever way we can. Having a values-based sense of purpose, persevering and supporting each other is one way to bring that light. I am profoundly optimistic about Australia's capacity to acknowledge our history with an open heart and move forward together. One of my biggest joys post-politics is my role as an honorary professor at the University of Adelaide, and at the risk of harping on a theme, the institution has a long-standing campaign to seek light. Through that role, I am inspired by the young people I meet, curious and compassionate, with admirable drive. I look forward to watching them go out into the world. They keep me on task and keep me energised, working for a better future. Much like being here with you today also energises me and reminds me why we all continue to do what we do. I'm delighted to be here to join in the celebration, and I thank you for sharing this special time together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia Gillard, for those very important words as we are approaching Chanukah. We have some challenges for all of us, and I do note particularly the reference to leadership, not just political leadership, but also community leadership as well. And there are a number of community leaders here in the room today that all have various challenges in going forward. And with that, could I also acknowledge Jennifer Huppert, the President of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, and also Paul Israel, who heads up the Israel-Australia Chamber of Commerce, who runs a number of missions to Israel each and every year, promoting the great work of Israel and promoting that collaboration. Welcome, Paul. Great to have you with us here today. If I could now ask the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable Daniel Andrews, to address us today, could you please join with me in welcoming Daniel Andrews?
First of all, can I, of course, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my deep personal respects to elders past and present. Can I pick up on a couple of the comments that my good friend Julia Gillard, former Prime Minister of Australia, made in relation to reconciliation and treaty? We in Victoria can all be very proud, regardless of our views on many different issues. On the issue of reconciliation, Victoria is taking the lead, and we are always strongest as a state when we lead our nation. Treaty is achievable. We've taken profound steps towards justice and fairness and a shared future that's built on truth with Aboriginal Victorians, and that's something that fills me with pride, and I'm sure you as well. I won't go through all the other long list of acknowledgements, but it's great to have to be here myself, and of course with Michael, to have both sides of politics properly represented. This mission that we're on in terms of delivering the most inclusive, respectful, empowered community, a community where we don't tolerate diversity, we celebrate diversity. We know it to be our richest asset. We know that our multiculturalism is a precious thing and something that always has to be protected and guarded and pushed forward, if you like. That is of great benefit to every single community, I would argue. But I think the bipartisan support, the bipartisan recognition of Israel's right to exist within secure and defendable borders, the bipartisan acknowledgement that the Jewish community in our state make our state fairer and stronger and more prosperous. The Jewish community makes us a more thoughtful state. The contribution in every field of endeavour, every walk of life, every industry, every sector, every day, every year of the Jewish community is something that I am profoundly grateful for. And on behalf of all Victorians, I take this opportunity, as I have many other times, to thank the Jewish community and its leadership, both secular leadership but also our faith leaders, and we acknowledge those rabbis that are with us today. The Jewish community has a lot to be proud of in Melbourne and Victoria. I think, not quite the biggest, but I think the best Jewish community in our nation, the most impactful, the best organised, the most generous. There can be no question about that. So many decades of philanthropic giving, endowment, that sense of generosity, giving back, growing. They're the themes as well, of course, that sense of charity and fundamental generosity. Tzedakah, I think if I've pronounced it appropriately. The sense that we are all only as strong as the weakest among us, that we are all only as prosperous as the fortunes of those who have the least. That power, with it comes responsibility, and with opportunity comes obligation. When you think about the contribution of the Jewish community, you can only be impressed, you can only be grateful, and to pick up on some of the comments that Julia made, you can only be optimistic. At the same time though, and Michael's got to speak after me, so I don't want to keep you sitting down for too long. At the same time, we have a profound obligation to be honest as well. And it is not an easy time to be a Jewish person. Not just here in Victoria, indeed it's a global issue. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. There is no question about that. And if we're not prepared to face up to that, if we're not prepared to critically examine the causes of that, then we are betraying those core values that I spoke about before. The ability to worship, the ability to not just practice your culture and heritage, but to share your culture and heritage with the broader community. We are betraying that sense of inclusion. We are betraying that sense of safety that every Victorian should be able to depend upon. Now, you can have this conversation without necessarily being maudlin about the future, being particularly pessimistic about the future. It's being realistic, and that's very important, I think. There's a number of things that the government is working on to try and better understand these issues. We'll have more to say about things we think we can do right across our state that will make this a more inclusive place, a fairer place, and a place where the Jewish contribution is only celebrated, because that's the way that it should be. We'll have more to say about that. Just finally, to Chabad of the CBD, thank you so much for again having this function. As David said, this space belongs to every single Victorian, and it is filled with its purpose, bringing people together, celebrating all of those things that make us so special by events like this today. It's often these events, rather than the political debate and the law-making that goes on in this building, that are the most enjoyable experiences and perhaps the most profound in many ways. To each of you, from my family to yours, from our government, from the Parliament, from the people of Victoria, I wish you a happy Chanukah. I say to each of you, Toda Rabbah, and then Chag Sameach.
Thank you very much, Premier. Your Hebrew is getting better. And great to have you with us again today. It's my great pleasure to now call on the Leader of the Liberal Party, the Leader of the Opposition, and my boss, Michael O'Brien, to say a few words. Please join me with welcoming Michael O'Brien.
Thank you very much, David, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past and present, to Rabbi Angus and Rabbanim, to the Premier, Daniel Andrews, to the Honourable Julia Gillard, to David Southwick and other members of Parliament, to faith leaders, to community leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is rare for me to come into this place, this Parliament, and to hear a speech from the Premier and to nod my head in agreement. But this is exactly what I've done, because the Premier is right. You can't quote me on that, Daniel. But on this occasion, the Premier is right. We do have and we do celebrate Australia's best Jewish community. We do celebrate the multiculturalism and the multi-faith nature of this state that makes this the best state in the country. It is so important that we are able to gather here and gather publicly to celebrate Chanukah, because without religious freedom, without the ability to be who we are and to celebrate who we are and our faith, we are diminished. So that is something that is very important to us as Victorians and as Australians. It is something that we must always protect jealously. And as the Premier indicated, in a time where across the world some of the ugly voices of intolerance are starting to raise their voice, we must be louder, we must be stronger, we must be more united than ever to say that we will be a state, we will be a nation where people of faith can be who they are, can be proud of who they are, and can profess who they are. That is so important. When I was a young university student, back many years ago, in fact I had my school Year 12 30-year reunion last Friday, so I'm ageing myself there, but when I got to university, it was shortly after that the first Gulf War commenced. And on campus, it was a time when many of my Jewish friends felt very concerned about being who they were, about celebrating being Jewish and professing their faith, because there was an undercurrent on campus of concern, and it's almost like Israel was being blamed for that Gulf War. And in times in human history, sometimes we see this ugliness rise up. Now, back then, I was, as a Catholic schoolboy going to university, I just wanted to stand with my friends. I wanted to stand with my Jewish friends and show my solidarity. So I joined the Melbourne University Jewish Student Society. I suspect I was the first and probably the last O'Brien who ever joined the Jewish Student Society. But I did, because the Jewish people are a proud people, are a magnificent contributor to this state, to this nation, and we need to stand with you. We need to stand with you and defend you if you are ever challenged. So this is something that I think all good Victorians will do. And the Premier is right, there is an absolute bipartisan commitment on both sides of politics to absolutely support our Jewish community. It's hard for me to even contemplate Victoria without the contribution that our Jewish community has made. In all fields, in law, in medicine, in politics, in business, in art, in social welfare, in education, in aged care. The Jewish community so often sets the highest standard and so often helps so many others beyond themselves. The charitable works of Victoria's Jewish community is legendary. Our greatest, arguably, I wouldn't say arguably, our greatest ever citizen, Sir John Monash, is an example of the contribution that the Jewish community has made to this state. So as we gather to celebrate Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, as we gather to reflect, we should reflect proudly on what the Jewish community has contributed to Victoria, and do so knowing that we will stand with you, we will stand by you, and we will work to protect you and your faith and your ability to be proud of who you are, because Victoria needs you and everyone to be proud of who they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, for those kind words. You've set the bar now to try and get another O'Brien into the Jewish student movement, so we'll see what we can do about that. It's my great pleasure to now call on Rabbi Engel, the Rabbi of Bayside, Chabad of Bayside, to say a few words. And following the Rabbi's speech, I'm going to ask the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition to light the Chanukah. So, Rabbi Engel.
The festival of Chanukah is celebrated by lighting candles. As we see here, the 8 candles of the menorah. We've heard about a number of things about Victoria, about Chanukah, more on the level of the wax, the wick, the physical side. I will attempt to light the flame to bring a bit of spirit, what the festival of Chanukah is about. Distinguished guests, honorable members of parliament, rabbis and lay leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Rabbi Joseph Isaac Schneerson, the previous leader of the Chabad movement, who passed away in New York City in 1950, would encourage his followers during the festival of Chanukah by saying, "We must listen carefully to what the candles are telling us." As we gather here in the Parliament House of the State of Victoria to light the 8 candles of the Chanukah menorah, I wish to bring out and share 2 such lessons. Judaism has many festivals throughout the year, but the one that focuses specifically on bringing light into a world of darkness is the Festival of Chanukah, also known as the Festival of Lights, where the main activity is to light another candle on each of its 8 nights, increasing a little bit of light to dispel much darkness. You will notice that the Chanukah menorah has 8 branches, 4 on the right, 4 to the left. In this house that we sit now, there are many debates where members will identify either being right-wing or left-wing. But when it comes to bringing light into a world where darkness may be present and where a sense of morality is often dimmed by confusion and a lack of direction, we must all join together and form one unit, one menorah to project light. Specifically, our Creator has given us, all of humanity, 7 universal laws, known as the Noahide laws, the foundation of a healthy civilization. They relate to the belief in and reverence for God, morality of intimacy, the prohibition of murder and theft, the requirement of a system of justice, and the 7th, the proper treatment of animals. Through keeping these laws, we create a stable and harmonious society in which the godly light, represented by the Chanukah candles, can shine. But furthermore, if we take a look at the menorah again, in addition to the 8 candles, there is a 9th candle which stands in the center. Curiously, this extra candle, which is only there to kindle the main candles, the 8, stands apart and above the other candles, although it is merely a servant, so to speak. And the reason is, when one's entire purpose and being is dedicated to serving the public and its needs, the role that many gathered here are blessed to honor and to fill, and specifically to increase the light this world so needs, this raises him or her to stand apart and even above to serve this vital cause. And so as we light these candles and watch the flames flicker, and of course when you light your Chanukah candles, beginning on the 22nd of December, right after the sun sets and darkness is filling the world, let us take their message and deliver it into our lives and also share this message with others. Together let us continue to bring light into the world and reveal its true purpose, a place where goodness and kindness, sensitivity and morality, guarded by the godly teachings handed down from Sinai by Moses, the teacher of godly wisdom, is apparent to all. May I wish you and your families a very happy Chanukah and a joyous one as well. We will now light the candles.
So I'm also, while we're lighting the candles, going to call on Chazan Brett Kay, who is the Chazan of St Kilda Shul, to sing for us. For those who didn't get the opportunity to join us in the One Voice singing concert at St Kilda Shul, where we all got to put on a massive singing extravaganza led by Brett Kay, you really missed something. He's got a great voice and you're going to get the opportunity to see that today. Brett.
David, you sang pretty well yourself, actually. I was very impressed. All right, we're going to start off with, before we light the candles, we're going to start off with a song of peace. He who giveth peace, who is in his high place, may he give peace to all of us and all of Israel, and indeed all of the world, as we all respond together. Amen. O Hoseh Shalom Bimromah, O Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru, Imru, Amen. All together. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים, הנרות הללו שאנו מדליקים, על הניסים ועל הנפלאות ועל התשועות ועל המלחמות שעשית לאבותינו, שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם, בימים ההם, בימים ההם, בזמן הזה. מעוז צור ישועתי, לך נאה לשבח, תיקון בית תפילתי, ושם תודה נזבח, לתכין מטבח, מצר המנבח, הזגבור משיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח. All together. הזמור משיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח. חג שמח.